What happens in a world where half of everything of consequence or value on the face of the earth becomes software?
No, we're in it for the long term. Our strategy is to buy Bitcoin and hold the Bitcoin. So there's no price target. I mean, I expect we'll be buying Bitcoin at the local top forever, and I expect Bitcoin's going to go into the millions. So we're very patient. We think it's the future of money. I think that the entire crypto crash has made a couple of things clear. First of all, there's one perfect thing, that's Bitcoin. That's a decentralized, ethically sound, technically sound, economically sound money. There's a bunch of imperfect things. There's the stable coin, the USD, Circle, and Tethers, and BUSD, and et cetera. Everybody wants a stable US dollar. They're struggling with how to do it in a compliant fashion with transparency. Then there's a lot of dangerous things. There's 19,000 dangerous things. It's basically all the unregistered security crypto networks running on proof of stake that have active management, project management teams, that have ICOs, that have some centralization in them. And Luna and UST was an example of one of those crypto security tokens that was mismanaged, and it blew up. And what's going to happen is an entire generation of crypto people are going to get educated on why Bitcoin is the superior asset, and then a bunch of regulators are going to accelerate their regulation of stable coins and accelerate their regulation of the crypto security tokens. And the winner of that entire exercise is Bitcoin, because once people figure out why Bitcoin is superior to everything else, then the institutions are going to come in with large sums of money, and we're not going to have to struggle through this mess of explaining why we're different than 19,000 other crypto tokens. Time is money. Okay, well, first of all, we won't add on to crypto positions. We will add on to our Bitcoin position whenever we come into excess cash. And that's a very simple strategy. With regard to regulation, there's been a deadlock in DC and on Capitol Hill around stablecoin regulation and around security token regulation. I think the administration wanted to move faster. Congress was moving slower. I think that that this meltdown of Luna, UST, that's going to accelerate the regulation of stable coins and security tokens, which will be a good thing for the industry. I mean, I think that clearly Bitcoin's been drawn down with all the risk assets in this deleveraging tightening cycle. But you know, there are also the crypto crash issues and the Luna Terra impact. So over time, I think as people get educated and as they get more comfortable, I think we'll recover from this drawdown. You know, Fed policy is very difficult to opine on or to predict. And so clearly they have a huge impact on how people value all assets, depending upon what they say from day to day. Isn't there something beautiful about making the world a better place for people that you love, your friends, your family, or yourself? You know, and when you think about the entire arc of human existence, and you roll the clock back 500,000 years, and you think about every struggle of everyone that came before us and everything they had to overcome in order to put you here right now. You know, you got to admire that, right? You got to respect that. Bitcoin is gradually demonetizing these other assets. And the idea is to return rationality, to make things more rational, right? If people start buying Bitcoin instead of buying a second investment property, the price of property will go down for people that want a first home. Bitcoin is the first engineered monetary system in the history of the human race. Full stop. We didn't have it for 1,000 years, right? We never had it before. Like, it's before, you have to build with crumbling sand on swamps. It's just, you're building on stuff that's sinking underneath you. And what causes so much passion, right? What causes people to, be willing to do anything to make this successful is this thought that we finally found something true and beautiful with integrity that gives us control of our life back in a world where we feel like we've lost control to politicians, we've lost control to circumstances, and everyone's looking for some way, something they can believe in that's truly theirs.
So, I'm being asked this a lot recently. What is my advice when it comes to the question?
It's not spoils of war, it's spoils of peace. This is another big idea I want to make. With everything else, if we monetize, if we have a bunch of money, if I give you $1 million and I tell you to go buy stuff with it, and you buy gold jewelry and a house and a car and a whatever, and I want it, I put a gun to your head, give me your stuff, Tucker, and you say no, I shoot you and take your stuff. There's nothing in this world that you can own that I can't take with force, except Bitcoin. Okay. If you take the $1 million and you buy Bitcoin, and you take personal custody of it, and you own the keys password is in your head. I hold the gun to your head, give me your Bitcoin, you can say no. Now, I can still shoot you in the head, but I don't get the property. You see, you can take it. This is the only property in the history of mankind, Tucker, you can take to the grave. The pharaohs wanted to take their gold with them to the grave. They created these pyramids to bury themselves with gold, but grave diggers and grave robbers steal the gold. You can't take anything else with you, but you can take the password in your head. Why is that significant? Well, you study the history of the Jews in the 30s in Nazi Germany, and most of them left with, if they were lucky, 10% of their assets. They would have left with all their assets if their assets were in Bitcoin. They couldn't move their house. They can't move a building. You can't haul the gold. Maybe you try to smuggle diamonds, not very good store of value. It's the history of every diaspora, every people. When you leave, when the Jews got driven out of Spain in, 1500, during the Inquisition, it was all over property, right? They're stealing their property. I think it'll go forever, right? I mean, I think the Bitcoin is going to climb in a serpentine fashion. It's going to advance and come back, and it's going to keep climbing. I think that the volatility attracts all the capital into the marketplace. And so the volatility makes it the most interesting thing in the financial universe. It also generates massive yield and massive returns for traders. And that attracts capital. Like, we're talking about the difference between 5% return and 500% return. So the fast money is attracted by the volatility. The volatility's been decreasing year by year by year. I think that it's stabilizing. I don't think we'll see as much volatility in the future as we have in the past. I think that if we look at Bitcoin and model it as digital gold, the market cap goes to between 10 and 20 trillion. But gold is, remember, gold is defective property. Gold is dead money. You have $1 billion of gold that sits in a vault for a decade. It's very hard to mortgage the gold. It's also very hard to rent the gold. You can't loan the gold. No one's going to create a business with your gold. So gold doesn't generate much of a yield. So for that reason, most people wouldn't store $1 billion for a decade in gold. They would buy $1 billion of commercial real estate property. And the reason why is because I can rent it and generate a yield on it that's in excess of the maintenance cost. So if you consider digital property, that's $100 to $200 trillion addressable market. So I would think it goes from 10 trillion to 100 trillion as people start to think of it as digital property. Now, it will replace gold, which is a $10 trillion asset. Bitcoin's like a 1.2. It'll go by a factor of 10. And in 3 to 5 years, it'll certainly replace gold. Then it will replace indexes, right? The S&P index or bond indexes. It'll start to demonetize fixed income and equity indexes that are used as a store of value. Peer-to-peer networks, and there's a lot of back and forth over whether or not those are allowed or not allowed, and it varies by jurisdiction. Yeah, I think it keeps going up forever. I mean, we're going to go to 10 million Bitcoin, right? Because digital property isn't the highest form, right? Gold was that low frequency money. Property is mid-frequency money, but when I start to program it faster, it starts to look like digital energy, and then it doesn't just replace property. Then you're starting to replace bonds. It's 100 trillion in bonds. There's 50 to 100 trillion in other currency derivatives. And these are all conventional use cases, right? I think that there's $350 trillion to $500 trillion worth of currency derivatives in the world. Mm-hmm. And when I say that, I mean things that are valued based upon fiat cash flows. Any commercial real estate, any bond, any sovereign debt, any currency itself, any derivatives to those things, they're all derivatives, and they're all defective. And they're all defective because of this persistent 7 to 14% lapse, which we call inflation or monetary expansion.
I love you.
How did I get into Bitcoin? I had a company with $500 million in cash, earning 0% interest, and I heard the bankers say, we're not even thinking about raising interest rates. I saw a K-shaped recovery where everybody on Wall Street got 30% richer doing nothing in a year, where everybody on Main Street had to work 30% harder to stay still. That's what I saw last year. If you're on Wall Street with $1 billion, you went into the year with $1.3 billion. If you're on Main Street working for a living, selling something by the sweat of your brow, you had to raise your prices 30%, working harder in order to generate 30% more money to buy the same thing you could have bought before the crisis. You have Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC, saying this is an asset. It's a scarce, speculative asset. They say it's speculative. Of course it's speculative, right? If it wasn't speculative, then $100 trillion would flow into it. It would have grown by a factor of 100 by now. I mean, there has to be some risk. It's a speculative store of value. Christina Lagarde says it's an asset. Even the bankers, when they're criticizing, quote unquote, they say it's not a currency, it's not a medium of exchange. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't need to be a medium of exchange. You don't need it. You don't need to replace the US dollar in the Western world to fix things. And money is energy, and energy is life. And if I keep sucking the energy out of the economy, I'm sucking the oxygen out of your system. Either, under the best case, you perform poorly. Under the worst case, I suffocate you to death or freeze you to death. That's the problem. That's why empires collapse. That's why economies collapse. And the problem, it's not just a problem for an individual. It's not just a problem for a family. It's a problem for every institution. It's a problem for every company. It's a problem for every city, every municipality, every government, every civilization. They all have this problem. And you can generally trace the problem to, I fought a war I couldn't afford to fight, and I paid for it with money I didn't have. Because it's the hardest to tax, and it's the hardest to steal, and it's the hardest to confiscate. It makes it the last thing in the world you're going to attack, the path of least resistance. Right? When it's time for me to tax property in California, I'm going to put a tax on the building. Buildings don't move. If I put a 2% tax on the Bitcoin's moving to Wyoming. If I put a 2% tax in Wyoming, it's moving to whatever state in the union they didn't tax it. And when the entire country taxes it, it's moving to Monaco. And if everybody, in Monaco taxes it, I can sell it to someone in China, right? It's universally desirable, scarce property, hard to steal. You can sell it, you can put a lien on it, you can mortgage it, you can develop it, you can protect it.
Who isn't dealing with anticipation for Christmas cheer? Tammy's decking the halls early, so you can spice up your wardrobe with a dash of Christmas spirit that will have you shining bright.
Protect it. I think Bitcoin's going to 1 million next stop, right? So 2,000 times 1 million is pretty good. Nothing wrong with that. And if the business itself works, you'll be worth 4,000 Bitcoin. But if you hold 100 million in cash and the business doesn't work, you'll be worth nothing or zero. The power of a decentralized crypto asset network like that is durability and integrity over time, over 100 years. I want to know that no one will ever create any more. You can create more gold, you can create more buildings, you could say, well, I can't create any more land, but yeah, you can't create more land on Central Park, but you can create more land in Kansas or the Great West. And so the problem with other assets is they're not scarce. And the other problem is they're in the real world. And as you know, we live in a 21st century cyber economy. So what would you rather have? A $1 billion hotel in Vegas that is 70% occupied that charges Vegas rates, or a $1 billion digital hotel that you can decompose and you can rent the rooms in any city in the world, and you could rent the rooms by the hour, and you can recompose it again, and you can move at the speed of light, and you don't have to worry about any damage or maintenance costs to it. And you could, if you had that digital property, that would be interesting to 8 billion people with mobile phones. And that would be interesting to high-speed, high-frequency traders. At some point, if I can convert the physical hotel to a digital hotel, and then I can rent out the rooms by the room minute to 100,000 different places with a computer, you can see how the rates go up, the utilization goes up. I can develop that property much better than I can develop land, in the Midwest. value of your salary is deteriorating by 20% a year. It's not falling at the rate of CPI inflation. It's falling at the rate of monetary inflation. It seems clear to me that the world wants more specialists. It wants you to be an expert and to focus in one area. And it's punishing generalist, jack of all trades, especially people that are generalists in the physical realm. Because if you're a specialist in the digital realm, you might very well, you're the person with 700,000 followers on Twitter and you show them how to tie knots. Or, you're the banjo player, with 1.8 million followers, and when everybody types banjo, it's you, right? Yeah. And so the world wants people that do something well, and then it wants to stamp out 18 million copies of them. Economists like Saifedean Ammous, who wrote the Bitcoin Standard, he estimates that the inflation rate in the modern era, dollar weighted, is 14%. Okay? Think about that. For the last decade, on average, all in the world, we've been inflating the currency by 14% per year. Now, it happens that that's equal to the rate at which the S&P 500 index is going up, 14% on average a year for 10 years running. MicroStrategy has a convertible bond. There are hundreds of billions of dollars of capital that can buy convertible bonds. Okay? Is it good or is it bad? Well, it's the only Bitcoin-backed convertible bond. There's only 2 convertible bonds in the world that are backed by Bitcoin, and we issued both of them. Okay? So then there's a junk bond backed by Bitcoin. There's one of them in the world. We issued it. Okay? There'll be ETFs. There'll be other kinds of products. They all compete with each other. Each one of them meets a different need in the market. Well, what if someone else comes along with a better bond? Okay, well, that's good too. What if Coinbase turned around tomorrow and decided to issue $20 billion worth of convertible bonds to buy Bitcoin? Would I be upset? Well, maybe it would make the MicroStrategy bond less desirable, but on the other hand, make Bitcoin more desirable, and then the Bitcoin would trade up, and then MicroStrategy equity would trade up, and then the MicroStrategy bond would trade up, and so the competition's probably a good thing. Like, for example, if you ask me, should I own Bitcoin or MicroStrategy stock? The answer is Bitcoin is a property. MicroStrategy stock is a security. When you're buying the security, you're taking management team risk, competitive risk, execution risk. Satoshi's innovation is real, which is another way to say we have created truly decentralized digital property in cyberspace that is not owned and controlled by any company, any individual, or any government. We have common property, pari passu, gold or land or commodities. Acknowledge that you can create digital property assuming that you have a fair, permissionless network without an ICO or a central party or an investment contract. So we know that Bitcoin has done it. It may theoretically be done again by somebody else, maybe a fork of Bitcoin, right? You could probably, your best argument would be a fair fork of Bitcoin now. If it were to fork right now, then maybe the thing that was created could also be deemed as property. I'm not saying it would succeed, right? Like, might not. You know, here's your best idea. What if the Chinese government forked Bitcoin and then made it illegal to use the first fork, but the second fork they kept in China, you know, and then they didn't interfere with it any other way? And maybe if Elon Musk forked Bitcoin in Mars, and you had Mars coin, China coin, and Bitcoin, and all three of them started from the state of the network right now, and then they had some geographic political reason to be separated, and you could hold that China wall or that Mars wall up. And there's nobody in Mars, right? But if there was, right? If you could do that, then maybe you have another digital property, right? Maybe.
No one seems to know this, but Amazon actually has a $50 million fund that they have to pay out every single month. And here's how you can get a cut of it. My name is Charlotte Mickelson, and we help everyday people grow their income with